Okay, so on that note, we have some time for some questions for Karen. If you can either write in the chat or raise your hand using the team emoji, and I'll help moderate it there. And let's see, let's go with Mike. You got your hand up? Go for Mike.
Hey, Karen. The question I have is in related to sort of staff retention and sort of overhaul throughout the mix when you started your journey through Lean. Have you seen better staff retention because of it, or do you still actually have a lot of staff turnover as part of the architectural office?
Okay, yeah, good question. We historically, even prior to this, haven't had high staff turnover. We have some people who've been with the company for many, many years. But I think that it probably has improved people's enthusiasm for RPK just because of the great culture that we've enhanced. I think we started out with a good culture and we've enhanced it even further. So, we have had people come and go over this timeline because of just, natural processes. We've had people that have decided to go back to school, or they've moved away from Edmonton for personal reasons. So it's really hard to say. There's so many external factors that end up influencing the turnover. So yeah, it's hard to say a direct thing, but we certainly don't have high turnover. And I think this encourages it. We've had some feedback recently just from some of the staff. One of them said, I can't imagine working at another office because of the culture that is at RPK.
Cool. And a follow-up question to that is, has any of the new staff that's come on since the training been onboarded with additional training, or have they just sort of followed in within sort of the current training and you're just bringing them up to speed with office culture?
Great. Yeah, a little bit of both. So in the fall of 2020, we had 3 more people that went through the Lean training program with Lavelle and Chafraz. And it just happened to be that we had brought people on fairly close in time to each other. So they went through and completed that. And I think it was helpful that there were some of them together so that they were able to talk about the concepts as they related to the architecture office. We currently have 1 newer person and 1 student who don't have that yellow belt training. And it is something that we've been talking about. It is tough to have that training with one person just on their own, because then they're not able to be sharing and integrating the specific RPK experiences versus doing a sort of a more generic Lean training. But we are definitely integrating them into these regular Lean check-ins on a weekly basis and into the bi-weekly meetings. So they are getting indoctrinated into the Lean culture just by the surroundings. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. We had one question in the chat from Kenneth Cantor, and his question was he'd be interested in knowing how much client involvement you see with Lean practice. And a follow-up to that is, and how much participation you encourage or hope to limit?
Well, I mean, I would love it if all the stakeholders in projects were interested in Lean thinking on a project. I'm a very collaborative person, and I like to have all my interactions with the stakeholders in that manner. In terms of client involvement, I think, one of the things that's key is to really clearly state on both sides what the expectations are. So making sure that we are listening to the client and understanding their expectations, and they're hearing, what we're going to deliver and what the timeframes are going to be. You don't necessarily have to use the word Lean, although depending on the client, it might be something that gets them interested and gets them thinking about these things. But, just guiding deliberately the process and making sure that you're intentional about as you move through the phases and that everyone's clear about what's been happening. I think that happens. So you can do it whether you kind of let them know you're doing it or not. You can still kind of have those conversations. But if it's a client that is interested, then you can explicitly tell them that you'd like to do it in a lean manner.
Awesome. So are there any other questions that people may have? Just raise your hand or put in the chat. I had one question there, Karen. And how are you guys liking, like, you say like the poll planning is not quite sticky for you right now. What is it about it that's still not quite, getting you guys going to use it on a more regular basis?
Well, if you remember the diagram that I repeatedly put on the screen, that was all the different things that we do. I think we're intimidated by trying to get all of those things onto one big overall timeline. It's quite complicated, and we do the Kanbans, and those are sort of the smaller tasks. But a pull plan can actually be a humongous body of work to really understand it. So I think it's a little bit intimidating, and I think it's also just that we aren't being intentional about doing it every time. So then, it feels scary every time. I think if we practiced it more, we would get better at it, and we wouldn't find it so intimidating.
True enough. Practice makes perfect, or practice makes it less scary.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. I had one question in the chat here from Sarah. And so follow up to Candace's question. In your super rad company-wide meetings, do you ever invite clients to come hear what you're going through and provide feedback? I just want to say this, I've attended, and they are super rad.
Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that that's in reference to the plus deltas. And yeah, we sometimes do. I would say actually not since the virtual world, but when we were all in the office in person, frequently if there was a client meeting that was in the office right before the plus delta, then we would invite them to join in on the plus delta right afterwards, and have either participation or just listen to what's going on. We obviously needed to be mindful about the what was discussed so that we weren't betraying confidentialities of other clients during those. But yeah, we have certainly many times had guests to our plus delta to participate. It's also been a nice time to bring in people who are maybe not with the office anymore due to various reasons to visit and get caught up. So we've had people that have been on maternity leave, and they'll come in and bring their little one and participate in the plus delta. Or we've had people who have retired or are back to school, and so it becomes a fantastic time for them to visit and participate again with the group.
Yeah, it's a really cool culture building exercise you guys go through. I just absolutely love it, like Sarah says. One other question in the chat from Natalia Koto. I hope I pronounced that right. You mentioned Revit, InDesign, and OneNote as lean-friendly software. Are there any other apps that you find useful that would be useful to integrate for promoting workflow in the architectural firm?
Well, since the virtual environment, we've really heavily started to use Teams in our office, and we're trying to reduce the amount of internal emails and instead use Teams for the topic channels and project channels and the chats. So that has been helpful in terms of sort of minimizing the onslaught of email. Now our emailers more coming from external organizations such as clients and consultants. That has helped. The other software, it's more of a platform actually than software, is Miro. I really quite enjoy it. I think I was actually introduced to it by Shafraz and Vel. But yeah, it's kind of fun if you haven't played with it, because it's just a big whiteboard essentially, but there are these tools that you can just easily draw shapes and add arrows to show a process, you know, or connections between items. So that one example of the pull plan was just one way you could approach it, but there are so many different ways to actually use the tool. You can have sticky notes that literally look like stickies if that's what you want to see, because that's what you're used to from your paper version of that. So that's one that I feel like I like it, but I don't use it as much as I would actually like to use. And I keep sort of being like, oh yeah, maybe I should do that on Miro.
I put a link to Mirrorboard in the chat if anyone wants to creep it out or dive down a rabbit hole. And I like Mirrorboard as well too. It makes a nice digital whiteboard to sit there and put a lot of different stuff, especially if you like to pop in memes every now and then. I love to throw in a good meme during a meeting.
Well, and it's really easy to make a nice looking layout without being a graphic designer. The tools are just kind of cute and bubbly on their own, and without very much effort at all, you can make something look nice.
Awesome. Brian, you have your hand up for a question.
I was just going to add about Miro. We use it as well. I just used it on Monday with a team in one of our project teams in Toronto to do a phase pull. So you don't need expensive, last planner system software to actually make it work. Miro works just fine.
Agreed.
Yeah, and as well too, like, keeping things, that's one of the reasons I like sticky notes as well too, is that there's so much variation and things change. And sometimes, software can be a resistance that people put it on, but Miro, I find that the resistance is a little bit less than other softwares. It looks like we're getting to the end of questions. Again, I'd like to thank Karen for spending time with us. Thank you to all of you for joining us as well too. I hope you found this session enjoyable and interesting. And again, we meet the Thursday or the Friday, the third Friday of every month. And our next one is coming up. So, save that date. It's going to be on February 18th for a virtual link coffee. And we will be putting links on our LinkedIn page and a link for this video on our YouTube page. So you can watch it later or share it with your friends and family and other teammates as well too. So on that note, thank you, Karen, for coming in. And the rest of you, stay safe out there, and we'll see you in a month. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for having me.